So, Ginny, it's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Ginni Mansberg, who has just co-authored this fantastic book, The New Teenage, with Joe Lamble. I really like the way it's written, so down to earth, practical, modern, everything about, technology and sex online and all sorts of topics that I didn't really think that you would go into. I can't see much that you don't cover that we do wonder about as parents and worry about. Everything from drugs, diet, health, nutrition, their bodies, their self-esteem. You cover it all. So what was the impetus to write that book, Ginny?
Literally air that you could cut with a knife. So I would have Joe and I both were noticing that this was like super stressful, and we were getting parents coming in who were like overwhelmed, and their kids were overwhelmed, and there was a lot of tension, a lot of love, a lot of fear, a lot of blaming themselves and guilt on the behalf of the parents, and a lot of anger from the kids. And it just seems quite a few things have changed, I think, since the dominant books were around, keep a tight lid on them, make sure they don't, if they go on Facebook, they'll meet a pedophile and die. We just wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed and try and close the gap to bring parents and kids together.
It's very realistic too, and that's what I liked about it, because the screen time thing, there's always the back of my mind thinking, should they be on it, shouldn't they, more limits, more of this, more that. Practically speaking, especially as a single mum, I just don't have that time to be watching all the time, and they're sneaky.
They are.
You can't be standing over them all the time, so it's got to be, okay, well, what if they do stumble across porn or have a terrible experience online with bullying or something like that, to be prepared.
That's true. And, I think rather than trying to control the screens, which, as you say, they're so smart, they can get around that in 2 seconds time, right? Better off we use some general principles to get them to self-monitor, to get them to make good decisions when they're on their screens, because the screens is how they socialize now. And to be honest, it's how they do their homework now. The days of writing in a foolscap piece of paper and putting it in a folder, with the textbook on the desk next to them, they're gone, right? So the screens are part of life. We can't fight them. We just got to try and manage it and get everybody up to date.
Just to start with, introducing the whole concept of, teen age and adolescence and that type of thing. Because when I first saw the book, I was thinking, teenagers, it's a bit far off for me. And I'm like, hang on, my daughter's 13, not really, no. So she fits just, starting. But when I was reading your book, you're talking about when adolescence starts, my son being 10 soon, it's far sooner than what I realised. So can you just maybe outline, when does it start, and what do we look out for as parents? Because I know it's not just about growing, facial hair and breasts after reading what you said. You're talking about growing taller and things like that.
Yeah, so they're often having that first growth spurt is the first thing that happens, right? When their hormones are starting to kick in, and there's a lot that happens before their voices start changing, and it's where they get their hair, and there's certain changes that are happening in their hormone levels, but also in their brain and the different parts of the brain that are growing at different rates and connecting to each other. I think, you can spend a lot of time like really fixating on their genitals and how much hair is on them. They'll just die of embarrassment. I mean, some kids are really happy to walk around like showing everything, like, with two parents in the lounge room, they don't care. But most kids are not going to be too happy about you perving on that. So I would just say, if they're having a growth spurt, it's starting. Get ready.
And what are the typical ages? Because they were earlier than I thought.
So you're starting to see stuff happen at 7, as early as 7. So, and especially for girls these days, and it is happening earlier than when we were kids. I feel like I'm much older than you, Kate. I don't know. I think so. But anyway, so it's only 10 years. But I just feel like when we were kids, I felt like primary school and puberty didn't kind of coalesce that much. Now
there was the unusual girl who apparently there were rumours that she had a period or she wore a bra, but that was she was magical.
That's right. And now, like,
unicorn.
Yes, or they're not unicorns anymore. And you know, they're bigger, they're physically bigger, they're taller, and they're just hitting that percentage of body fat that is required to make sex hormones just much earlier. So, you know, that's okay. Like, I don't think we need to. I think we can get really bogged down in what's happening there. At the end of the day, what you want to get them through periods, right? And for boys, there'll be certain changes that, like, he's going to freak himself out if he has a wet dream. So you want to kind of get them through all of that. But mostly it's around managing their brains, right? Because it's their brains that are the things that do the most changing.
Mm. Yeah, I know you spoke about the different hormones, estrogen, progesterone, all those types of things, and how that influences things such as risky behaviour, peer relationships, and then also the brain's reward system, which I find that quite interesting. Would you like to talk about those things?
Yeah, so one of the hormones that I think a lot of people don't think about with teenagers is oxytocin. So oxytocin is the love hormone or the bonding hormone. And in fact, we've got studies that show if you go into a marriage counselling session and you give people a squirt of oxytocin, which you can do up the nose beforehand, it's a much more successful marriage counselling session because people kind of like find the love. We know that teenagers have very sensitive oxytocin receptors. So it's not that they have more oxytocin in their brains, they have very sensitive receptors. So they are primed to be quite intense in their feelings. And you can see that. Any of us who've got teenage kids, wow, like, okay, there's, yeah.
Zero to, whoa.
Yeah, and then, like, they are so devoted to each other. The friends are just so intense now. And then, you know, their first love is so intense, even if, like, this is a person they've only ever, like, met on Instagram and done a few DMs with. Like, they're actually, like, have these really, really intense feelings. And then what we now know that we didn't know when we were teenagers is we've got these functional MRI and, like, PET FDG scans. And what these different new scans can do is that you can put someone awake into a scanner and then show them a movie and scan their brain to see which areas of the brain are lighting up. And you can take a group of adults and show them a movie and watch their brain, and then take a group of kids. And not only do you see which areas of the brain light up, but then you can see the connections between the brains light up. And what you can see is that teenagers have some areas, particularly when it comes to judgment, shrinking. They're not very good. And the reward system for risk, they're big. They do really well. And when you think about it, like, the design of adolescence, you know, not that I'm a big, like, you know, design kind of person, like, you know, in the intelligent design space, but, you know, you kind of think that the whole biological purpose of adolescence is to see these children go off, make a series of bumps on the road while there's still a community to keep them safe, and then go off and form a new family unit or a new tribal unit that will explore. So they need to make mistakes, and they need to push boundaries, and they need to push out there, because otherwise they're spectacularly ill-equipped to face what's coming to them. They have to do all that
like
stuff.
the old initiation rites of passage in tribal cultures. But they had the community around them, or the support network.
They certainly did that. And, you know, brothers and sisters and cousins and aunties and uncles, we don't have as much of that anymore. But that's the design of it, is to sort of, they're meant to, like, stumble and fall, and it will break us as parents to watch them do it. And, you know, some of the falls are bigger than others, and some of them are, you know, heaven forbid your son, you know, sexually assault someone. Wow, like, that's a fall you don't want him to make. So we've got to, as parents, like, try and use a certain amount of judgment by knowing our kids, and also understanding that they're going to have to make some mistakes, and we're going to have to slowly take the training wheels off the bike.
And that's where you talk about the 5 C's, the communication. Sorry, the communication wasn't one of them, but ultimately around communication, aren't they?
Yeah, so it's connection and compassion, and which is another word for empathy, and then collaboration with the people around you who can help you, but also with them, so get their buy-in into things. Confidence, and sometimes you got to fake it until you make it, because they need to know that you're the rock and that you're not losing
control.
You just got to assume
that's the hardest one.
This is where you go into the bathroom and on your own, and then come out and go, I've got this, you know. And then the competence piece, because I think there's nothing there is nothing more sharply honed than a teenager's BS radar, right? So they are And like, interestingly, go on YouTube and some moron who's spruiking ideas that honestly, I don't know where they come from about, you know, paleo diets or whatever. Like, they're totally, like, there's no BS radar happening there. But you, the parent, are the focused beacon of BS radar is right on you, and you say the wrong thing and like you're out. And especially like when mum's going, oh, you know, you don't want to be on Facebook, and they're like, oh God, like, Mum, I'm not on Facebook. No one's on Facebook. Like, don't, social media is not Facebook. You kind of need to get a little bit of your lingo up so that you're not looking like a moron.
Yeah, credibility.
Yes, yeah.
Big part of the book, or a big chapter, was devoted to the importance of sleep, which as parents, we know how valuable that is when we think back to our little darlings when they were little darlings. But yeah, that was really interesting to read about that. Can you talk about all the fact that this big list of areas that affects, I mean, mood is pretty to be expected, but, you know, including increasing risky behaviour, headaches, acne, weight gain. I mean,
yeah,
who would think from sleep?
So a lot of kids think that as they get closer to adulthood that they should sleep like an adult, like 7 hours a night. And in fact, science shows us that they need 9 to 9.5 hours a night, which is quite a tall order for kids going to school because they have to be up so early. And the biological clocks are priming them to go to sleep later, but not that much later, not at 3 a.m, but that's what they kind of want to do. So let's first of all talk about what the implications are for lack of sleep. The first thing is that they won't feel tired. Their parents won't notice they're tired, and their doctors won't talk about know that they're tired. And the other thing that often happens is they're seeing a psychologist because of anxiety or depression, and the psychologist never says, well, how much sleep are you getting? And yet, as you said, there's this conga line of horror if they do clock up a massive sleep debt over, you know, a week, a month, a year. What they're clocking up is an increased risk of anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts, and actually suicide attempts and suicide. Risky behavior, whether it's drugs, sex, sending a dick pic, you know, taking a nude picture, saying something bitchy, making a bitchy comment online that is, you know, can get them into a huge amount of trouble afterwards, you know, commenting meanly on someone's TikTok or Snapchat, that sort of thing. Decreased academic performance, decreased sporting performance, weight gain, acne, headaches, you name it, it's all linked to lack of sleep, and it builds up over time. So when you have that degree of horror that happens from lack of sleep, then you have mums, and often it's parents who are working, whether they're single parents or otherwise, they're exhausted, they've got their own stress, they're having their ass chewed at work from a variety of other things, they've got other kids to look after. At 9 o'clock, they just go, you know what, I'm going to bed. You just do what you do because I actually can't do this, right? And they don't want to have the fight. I mean, none of us want to have a house full of war.
No, especially at that time of night. So I need my sleep. I give up. If you're going to be tired tomorrow, that's your problem. I can't do it.
Correct. And I totally, like, believe me, I get that because I'm exhausted and I don't want to have a 2-hour discussion with you, because teenagers can be super drama queens, right? And at the end, it's all going to be fine and you have a big cuddle and I love you and I love you too, Mum. But, you know, you're going to take 2 hours to get there, by which time, like, you've had it, right? And like, at some point I mean, a lot of my patients have just given up, right? They just go, all right, I'm off to bed, see ya. They've got no idea what time their teens are going to sleep. And so we need to fix that. And we didn't write a chapter and present you the horror in order to freak you out. In some ways, the conga line of horror is your line in with the kids. And Kate, I want to tell you that I have these conversations with my patients all the time, because if they come in with anxiety, depression, they want a mental health care plan, or acne, or they're gaining weight, or whatever it is, I'll always ask about sleep, because it's always lurking there in the background. Yeah. And parents think they can't have the fight with the kids about the phone in the room, for example, or the screens in the room. And you don't need to make it a fight. You need their buy-in, and you get their buy-in by sharing the conga line of horror with them. Because whether it's that they want to get into architecture or engineering at uni, or whether it's that they want to, you know, make the rugby team, or whether it's that they don't want acne, or whether it's that they're feeling miserable.
The weight gain would be a big thing among teenage girls in particular, I imagine.
You've got to line in to get their buy-in, because if you don't get their buy-in and it's just your will trying to get over the top of theirs, you will lose. And there's no point in doing that. You've got to get their buy-in. So their buy-in comes by showing them how bad it is and for them to join the dots in their own life. I have zits and my thighs are bigger than I want. And, you know, I don't like a massive focus on body because, you know, there's some problems with that. But, you know, I've got these things that I don't like. I don't feel happy in myself and I'm not sleeping, and the data's pretty clear. Once you have that, you've got to help them out. So what I always say to my patients is, okay, this is because what they are fearing, why they don't want to leave their phones outside and turn their phones off at 9 o'clock to help them get to sleep earlier, so they're not just scrolling through Snapchat.
And just on that note, I just wanted to reiterate that you say 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Brains off. 9 o'clock at night. And that's unanimous, apparently.
The whole family. Yep. And we spoke to, I don't know, maybe 55, 60 experts for this book. Not one said any different. And so, and it's got to be, you can't just go, you, nasty teenager, are turning your phone off at 9 o'clock, because their BS radar is going, you know, they're going,
hypocrite.
Yeah, correct. They know we are being hypocrites, right? As their parents, we are being hypocrites, because if they see you, they're scrolling on their phone looking at Snapchat and you're not answering their questions because you're too busy looking through Facebook, what is the difference? In their head, you're being just as bad, you know, even though you might not have a weight problem or a depression problem or whatever it is. So the whole family needs to go and stow all the tech in the laundry at 9 o'clock, right? And, you know, you got to line up your 4-power packs on top of the washing machine, and all the tech goes in there as a family, and don't make this about one teenager's bad behavior.
That's even more isolating, isn't it?
It is, and it's not fair, and it's BS. It's not okay. Like, we've got to be doing this every bit with them and admitting that we could be all doing better on the phone front. But I think I get patients all the time, and, you know, we talk about sleep, and, you know, mum always goes, well, I've told her she shouldn't be on her phone. She's on it all night. She's always on the phone. But it's amazing. They all say, yes, they want to get rid of their phone. But their fear is these friendships are so intense. They have got access to each other 24/7. And if you think about when we were at school, we went through the school gates at 9, left at 3, got on a bus, got home. If someone wanted to speak to us after hours, they had to ring the home phone and speak to our mum. And then we had
in the hallway, sitting in the hallway,
in the
whole
hallway,
family can hear your conversation.
And with your father going, get off the phone, love. You know, you've been on the phone for too long. So there was no possibility of really intimate and quite intense conversations at 11 o'clock at night. These days, these friendships are so intimate. These girls are terrified of, my friend might need me. I can't put my phone away. What if she needs me? And they all have their own dramas, and they're needing each other so much. So I always say to my patients, throw me under the bus. Tell your friends, oh my God, my crazy mother just took me to this bitch of a doctor, and the doctor told me I have to put my phone away at 9 o'clock. What a moron. And my mum's like, totally bought it. So sorry, guys, I'm going to be off my phone for the next week. Chuck me under the bus. And, you know, they're almost relieved to have a way out. And I say to them, your first day might be a bit of a detox. You'll be walking into school going, oh my God, what happened? Or you'll be picking up your phone at 6 o'clock the next morning going, what happened? Nothing happens. And after that, you're just relieved. You get a holiday from it. And
a bit of FOMO. Does a bit of FOMO come in there?
FOMO or faux blow, fear of being left out. You know, they're worried that someone's going to troll them on social media, that someone's going to put nasty comments on their TikTok and they're not going to be there to defend themselves. But really, just saying something nasty back help. Like, it doesn't matter, right? I think what's more important is to get their buy-in, and they will buy in more than you think if we help them. And as parents, we can also say, just tell them your bitch of a mum is forcing you. The whole family's like, you know, my mum's on some new crazy campaign to get all of us off our phones, and now we've all got to go put our phones on the charger at 9 o'clock in the laundry. What a moron. That's fine. You know, chuck us under the bus. It's fine. And you'll be amazed at what turns around. Like, a lot of kids with a lot of anxiety, get them to sleep enough, and that can be enough. We know that antidepressant medications in kids don't work. We've got the data there. It's a very small. We just had a huge review article of it come out in one of the big medical journals, but it actually showed that there's a very limited role for antidepressant medications for teenagers. And what is the point of putting them on these heavy-hitting medications if you could just do the same thing by getting them to go to sleep at a decent hour?
Yeah. Yeah, which actually brings me to the next topic you're talking about. Obviously, the importance of diet, nutrition, family meals together. Obviously, eating disorders is a big at that age group. That's really when they're really susceptible. But I found it interesting talking about the family dinner, which we've all heard is really nice for the family and bonding and communication and that sort of thing. But it was interesting to see some stats there about how it helps with resilience, self-esteem, and less incidence of smoking, substance abuse, violence, teen pregnancy, depression, and the list continues. So, yeah, would you like to talk about the family dinner and nutrition and how they're really not eating enough fruit and veg?
No, so the family dinner is really important, and families in Australia come in all shapes and sizes, and I don't think it really matters even if there's one mum or one dad or two dads and one kid. I don't think it really matters. It's just about ritualizing the process of sitting and eating together. And you don't need to sort of go, right, kids, we're having a family dinner, let's talk about our feelings. Like, you don't need to do any of that. Just chill out, but eating dinner together as a family, and all that research that we talked about, 3 times a week, that's what you have to do to get. It's not every single night. Ideally, more is more. But what I'm seeing an epidemic of is every man for himself. There's food in the fridge, go sort yourself out when you're ready, and kids eating in their room and in their beds. When I started researching for this book, Kate, if someone had told me that children were eating a meal in their bed, I would have thought that was a unicorn, but it's not. It's a really big thing. So I get that I have a bit of OCD when it comes to hygiene. The thought of having crumbs of chicken in the bed is just beyond disgusting to me. It's bad for their posture. It's bad for their digestive system. It means they're missing out on any communication with their parents at all. They're just passing like ships in the night. And I've got so many patients who wake up in the morning to a sink full of plates. So they know the kids have eaten something, but it certainly wasn't with them. And it certainly wasn't down in the lounge room or the dining room.
And not knowing what they're eating either.
You have no idea, because, if you have a cupboard full of crumpets and white bread and Pop-Tarts or buckets of ice cream and they're disappearing, well, there's your hint. That's probably what they're eating. And we know that kids are not eating enough fiber and enough fruit and vegetables, and you've got to feed your gut good stuff. It's fiber's taken a massive knocking lately. It's so, the paleo people are really anti-fiber. They don't like any grains. And so, and there's nothing like a fad diet for teenagers. They're all over it. I think they're like, a vegan diet with a side order of beer and Tim Tams. But, they are all about a fad diet, and they're just cutting out massively important food groups: dairy, fiber, eggs, any source of B12. It's not awesome.
Is that about because they're focused on body image? Is that what's motivating it, or is it ease or convenience?
It's a combination. So it is what their peers are doing. It's what they're seeing online. So from their heroes, the influencers that they're
trying to sell some shake or something.
Yeah, that's right. And then the boys with the protein powders who are, trying to eat, 12 eggs for breakfast, and lots and lots of protein powder. It doesn't work. Just puts strain on the kidneys. But, these kids are influenced by that. I think they also, to a certain extent, want to be a little bit superior to their parents. Like, oh, mum, you got no idea, you're killing the planet, you and your cows, or your methane. They like to do that a bit, but also deep in there as well is a real sense of compassion. Like, a lot of these kids are really committed to saving the planet. And now they might have some crazy ideas when they want to do it, they'll put a black tile for Black Lives Matter on their Instagram page, but they won't actually go in a march, or they won't actually do anything that would really move the needle. Or they're really into saving the planet, but they leave all the lights on, in the bedroom and the bathroom, and leave everything on and the heater on when they go to school or whatever it is. But they have this real sense of compassion in there, and they have it for you see it for their friends, you see it for the planet, or for the causes that they really care about, or for animals. And that's your kernel, and that's your way in to use that to get their compassion to be broader. for other people, for the people that they look down on, who are the morons, and they think everybody's a moron. But, that is your in, because they do have that compassion there.
And what I like in your book is you give practical advice on things like how to deal with chubby teens. That sounds so badly put, how to deal with chubby teens. But you've got a big section on it, which is a reality. And then, there's a time when you often do put on weight, eating disorders, signs to look for, and also moving across a bit here, but a similar type of thing. On acne, you're not just going, we'll get them eating healthy food and washing, and let's not talk about this, it's a vanity. You're really focused on, well, it is a problem for them. How can we help? You can talk about whether we should be squeezing zits or not. I found that both of those two areas really enlightening and helpful as a parent, rather than going as a topic that, we're above that, let's not worry about that, let's just worry about their academic performance and their health. That it is a real issue to these kids. How they look and feel about themselves is everything at that age.
Well, I was a pizza face in the 80s, and thank God that we didn't have mobile phones, and that the cameras that my parents did have were not very good. So just how red and foul my face was not quite as vivid as it would have been if I was a teen today. But my acne caused me a lot of angst and a lot of distress. So when my kids, who are now in their late 20s, but when they went through acne themselves, I was straight onto it. Like, I did not want them to have to suffer the way I did, and the names that I was called. And I was literally called pizza face all the time. I didn't want, and it wasn't that my mum did it, she had acne as well, and it's not like she had no compassion. She had a huge amount of compassion, and she took me to the one of the counters at David Jones, and what the advice she was given, that advice was just horrific and made everything so much worse. And I wanted the parents who read this, who were interested, to take a compassionate perspective from their children, and not to fear acne treatments, but to ask their kids what they want. Do you want to get this under control, from a compassionate perspective, and also to arm you with what really works, so that you don't get stuck buying scrubs or toners, which are just going to make everything worse. We want evidence-based management of acne, because that will make such a huge difference to your teen's well-being.
And you even talk about stretch marks, which was interesting.
Yeah, well, I've been really surprised at how many teenagers are really devastated by stretch marks. Now, a lot of teens will have a growth spurt, and a lot of that will be up, but a lot of it will be out as well. So a lot of girls will get stretch marks, and that's partly their hormones as well, around their breasts, around their thighs, around their bellies, and they are really, really distressing for them. And I just, when we talk about our 5 C's, the last of which is competence, we just wanted to give our readers, our parents, some evidence-based strategies of what you can say, so that you don't get stuck on looking at really expensive products that are peddled by Instagram influencers that will not help your teenager at all, but rather than help them understand it. The reality is, most of the stretch marks that they get as teenagers will totally have faded into tiny little lines on their legs, on their thighs and bellies as they get to adulthood. It's not going to be a problem. But are they going to have these perfect, flawless, Victoria's Secret's modeled legs? Probably not. But they're still beautiful. That doesn't really matter.
Mm. And the most insightful chapter in the book for me was the one on sex, porn, contraception, STIs, sexuality, and gender diversity. And you really went pretty open there. Some of that material I was surprised and relieved that you were talking about it. One of the, what did you say about masturbation? Yes, we are going there. It's like, I don't want to read this, but it's arming us as parents, and we don't want to be ignorant. We want to be there for them. So I like that you were quite helpful in ways to deal with it if they do stuff up and send pics. Can you talk about that? I mean, why would our teenage daughters or sons be sending nude pics of themselves to people they don't know? So, and how much is it happening?
So we don't have really good, accurate data, because you can imagine collecting that is impossible. So anecdotally from the experts that we were speaking to, and also just from our practices from Joe and I, it's incredibly common. And there are different communities. I mean, Australia is such an amazingly diverse community now of different people from different cultures. And so there probably isn't one type of teenager, but within the communities that Joe and I look after, it's incredibly common, and it's seen as a bit of a flirt. Don't forget, a lot of these kids are not seeing each other in person, you know, and certainly during the pandemic, they weren't seeing each other at all, because those times where they get to see each other and eye each other across a train platform after school, those were kind of, you know, disappearing. And they are often like doing what they call sliding into each other's DMs. They're often meeting online when it comes to just like Snapchat, Instagram, commenting on each other's pictures and eventually getting together that way. Their way of flirting can be sending a pic, and they are into risk taking. They're biologically programmed to risk take. So how do we have that conversation with our children? And I think, you know, you're a single mum of a son. I was a single mum to 2 sons. And thank God I didn't know about dick pics back then. They're now in their late 20s. So I missed that whole thing. But, you know, the last thing your son wants to talk about is showing his dick to a girl with his mother. So we need to have the good community around us to help have that conversation. But also to just go, hey, if you're going to sext, which is, you know, sending one of those funny pics, how about we do that in a safe way? And so some of the safe ways are not showing the face, you know, so that it's not an identifiable photo of you. And so keeping the face out of it as a rule can be much better. And then they need to understand that once it's left their phone, they've lost control of that picture. And even if it's gone to somebody that they trust very, very, very much, their Romeo and Juliet hormones are intense for now, but the person they think is going to be the father of their children at 13 might turn out to be a bit of a dick in 6 weeks'
Good
time.
probability, probably.
Yeah. So I think just, you know, having the conversations about if you're going to do it, how can you do it in a way that will protect you and make sure that you're not, you know, being shared, you know, going viral for all the wrong reasons.
And stumbling across porn, I mean, that's parents a nightmare, but then thinking realistically, they are curious. I mean, we were curious too, but it was, as you mentioned in the book, it might be looking at a Penthouse magazine that someone's father or uncle is lying around, and it was pure curiosity. But nude photos of women is quite different than what they're potentially looking at online.
No, I know. So surveys have shown that what they're looking at is a video that preferences male pleasure, and that male pleasure comes without consent. It comes often with a fair amount of violence. It comes with sex that is not just penis vagina sex, but is oral sex, anal sex. He might be having sex with her breasts. It might be all sorts of things that most women will not find pleasurable, but the women in the porn who are paid actors in providing an entertainment movie are pretending to find quite orgasmic. Now, that for a 13-year-old boy, which is the average age at which boys will actively seek out porn, as opposed to the 11, which is the average age that they stumble upon it, they don't really understand the difference between what is healthy consensual sex and what they're seeing online, because who is talking to them about what they're seeing online? And as we said, the last person they want to talk about that with is mum. And so we've given a few practical tips about some of the things to say to your kids to help them understand that what they're seeing online is not normal, and it's not sex. It's not a representation of sex. It's entertainment. It's often not very healthy.
And you talk about too, the whole body. The bodies aren't realistic of the women in particular, but also the men, you know,
the
large
men.
penises. I mean, what does that do for a young boy's self-esteem?
And they go for like 18 minutes, you know, and so like find me a 14-year-old boy is going to last that long. So he's just going to think, well, I've got this micro penis that goes for, you know, 2 minutes, and then I'm like diseased. I have a problem, you know. But on the flip side, I've got 16-year-olds who come and see me asking me for Viagra because their beautiful 16-year-old girlfriends just don't do it for them, you know, because and like these girls are
Because they're looking at
magnificent.
porn models. Is
Yes.
that why? The idea of what they think is
Yeah.
normal?
And these girls have extensive genital surgery for legal reasons, because labia majora, which are the outer lips of the vulva, are not legal in porn, which I just find the fact that you have a mandatory genital mutilation in there for the sake of porn is just foul. But they need to look like a Barbie doll, right, from the outside, and literally like a Barbie doll, because they get rid of all the hair as well. So you get some like a normal looking 14-year-old who feels like her vulva is like some like perverse, weirdo, unusual thing, when in fact it's just a perfectly normal vulva. And we need to be having a conversation with our kids. It's easier mother to daughter and father to son, probably, but we provided this amazing resource that Joe and I love, which is called It's Time We Talked. And it's a great website for any parent of a teen. If you've not been on it, it's a great conversation starter. And even if you just go, you know what, can you just have a look through this website? You don't need to talk about it with me, but just go and have a look at it. Yeah, it's
That's
amazing.
great to know. Because I even like that in your book, how you'll give a few examples of what you can say. So
Yeah.
you're not saying you should be talking about these things. You're saying you could say blah, blah, blah,
Yes.
little quote, which in very normal language. Yeah, so it's very, very helpful. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, Ginni. It's a fantastic book.
Thanks,
I got a
Kate.
lot out of it as a parent, and quite relieved that I can face some of these things I don't really want to think about, and knowing that other parents are doing it too. And I really like the lack of judgment towards parents in it. I found it very, very accepting and not condescending at all, which is a relief, I think.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks for understanding that too. That was really important to us.